Okay, welcome everybody. I want to do something slightly different for this session. Most of the presenters have profound ideas that they want to give you and develop ideas. I have no such wisdom to cast upon you. What I do have is quite an interest in online learning and teaching. So when I sort of became an academic about a decade ago, I was sort of lucky enough to start teaching postgraduate students almost immediately. And one of the things that became obvious fairly quickly is that they were moving online. They were moving from being on-campus students to being off-campus students, or as we call them, a deacon in one of our Deacon Speaks cloud students. And so I actually started thinking about teaching online quite early. And in fact, have been finding ways for online students to be able to move back to face-to-face in interesting ways. So the current move online has been actually a disruption to what I've been doing, which is a movement from online to face-to-face instead of a movement from face-to-face to online. So it's been quite interesting for me, and it's been something I've been thinking about for some time. And certainly one of the things that I think has come out of the fact that we've all been teaching and learning online is a development of a lot of experience, a lot of observations, a lot of thought, from very smart people has gone into this. And what I really want to do in this session is start to get us to try and link that experience and those kind of empirical ideas that we've been developing to try and link them to theory. Now, some of you will have been doing this already. I know Nikolai certainly has, and I've been doing it to a certain extent. But I really want to sort of, because I know that the collective intelligence of this room is far greater than any individual, to try and get us to share and think and develop this. So we're actually going to start by going straight into breakout rooms. We'll go into breakout rooms for about 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So we've got 15 people, which means, let me see, if I take away myself, 14, yeah, probably 3 breakout rooms I think will be appropriate.
Yeah.
Now, the instruction you have when you go into the breakout room is to think about experiences you've had in teaching and learning online in the last, either in the last couple of years or if you've been working longer in that space as I have over that period. But really, we've had a kind of intense experience. And this, what you're doing now, has been a movement from face-to-face. Our first 2 summer schools were face-to-face. Last year, we moved online, and we've stayed online here. We'll move, hopefully, back to face-to-face in the middle of the year, and hopefully some of you can join us for that. So you've all had a great experience either teaching or learning or coming to things like this of that. And so I really want you to take one of those experiences, those vignettes, and think a little bit about what it was that about teaching and learning online that was different, was that needed a different approach or needed you to do the same thing in a different way. And then to start to think about how cultural, historical, and activity theories can be used in that sense. Now, when we come back, we'll share those ideas. I'll also present a little bit of the thinking I've been doing, but really it's a chance to think about those ideas and develop them. So you have, and we'll just put this up again so that those of you who have, I'm doing it. Those of you who have just come on should be able to get access to a Jamboard I've set up. So there's 2 Jamboards. One is for the problems or the opportunities that online teaching. I've actually put a little thing of myself, which was what stimulated me to do this session. I was reading a paper by Whelan and Moody, and they will actually be coming along to do talk about this reading in the reading group in February, which really thought about the problem of micro-credentials and the way that micro-credentials have been enabled by the movement online. And it's really something that's actually changing or has potential. It hasn't really become part of it. But if it is taken up in a powerful way in tertiary education, will change the nature of what we're doing. And so that's my stimulus for one of the problems or opportunities. It's about micro-credentials. It's given a quote from Moody and Whelan. But then there's a second page. I'll just show this to you. So let's get rid of that. So there's a second page there as well. I hope you can see that. And start to think about what you've learned. What were some of the ideas that you've drawn on to do this? So remember, on a Jamboard, you can draw. And you can type. And also you can paste things as well. So all of those things are available. You can also delete anything you've done. No, can't seem to.
The second one is like a rubber eraser. Yeah,
right.
The second, just below the pen. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Yep. You can either rub it out, or you can actually physically delete some of them if you've got a text that you think, but all those things you've pasted on. So, okay, feel free to use those two. They're available to all of you in your different groups, and Veronica will actually send you off into 3 breakout rooms.
Yeah.
So you're just before you go, your instruction is to think of a vignette of online teaching and learning, which has been important to you, and to share that, and then start thinking more generally. Now, Constantina will actually be, at some ungodly hour of the.
Yeah, Demi maybe no.
And Demi isn't there. And Judy, I think, is only popping in occasionally. So she probably should have done 2 groups.
Yeah.
How many in each group? Let's have a quick look.
Maybe I will join. Yeah, I will join group 3. There are only 3 people in group 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds okay. So I think there's another, I can't read. I think it's a Greek name.
Yeah. Constantina, I think. But anyway, my Greek's not good. But yeah, I think they're all non-absent. I should have thought of that, actually. Probably had two rooms. Anyway, let's go and everybody's got at least 3 people, which is the minimum. I'll go off and just.
Yeah, I'll go to room 3. You can go to room 2.
Okay, right. I did the right thing.
Yes.
I suddenly disappeared from my room. So just as I was getting to an impassioned point.
All right. Okay. Well, you can give it to all of us.
We were developing the point that you left us with, which was, see, here in South Korea, kids do most of their academic work in high school to pass the college entrance exam. And when they get to university, they want to party. They want to, this is the time to make connections, make friends, which will serve you your whole life long, and maybe get married, or find the person you're going to marry. So they're really missing this membership training and the orientation training and all that other stuff. They're really missing it. On the other hand, when I offered my students the chance to come, I didn't do this. It was some brilliant guy in the administration who said, okay, we all have to do classes online from the classroom so that if students want to show up, they can show up, which is really a stupid idea. You get the worst of both worlds. But I did it. Nobody showed up. Why did nobody show up? Not because they didn't want to party. They wanted to party, but because of real estate prices here in Seoul. So everybody's living out in the countryside where it's really cheap, and nobody wants to move to Seoul, where an apartment, just to rent an apartment, will set you back several hundred million won, which is hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's crazy.
I mean, that social aspect of sort of face-to-face and online, I mean, is quite interesting, isn't it? In a sense, one of the reasons that, say, and I actually surveyed my students as to this, one of the reasons that my students have been increasingly going online is because of lifestyle factors. The fact that they, because they're postgraduates, they tend to be mature age, they've got families, they've got jobs, they've got other things they need to do with their lives. They may be living, so there's a sense in which going online gives a more democratic access, in that people who are not within, traveling distance of the university can get there, but also those who are, are looking after children, who are looking after parents who are having to work full time, can get access to it. So there was a sense in which it does those things while cutting off other things, that kind of social interaction. Anyway, other observations as the kind of changes and things that have occurred, and certainly looking at the Jamboard, there's been lots of about the mechanics of it.
Do you want each group to share what we put in the Jamboard?
Well, let's quickly go through and
Yeah.
see if anything, if you want to make any comments about what's there, because we all can have that Jamboard, at least the first page open, which is the only page which has anything on it.
Mm-hmm.
I know ideas useful, as suddenly there's a whole lot of it has appeared there. I haven't looked recently.
So maybe each group can take turn to share, elaborate on what we put on the Jamboard. So yeah, group one, room one. Yeah, Alma, Ella, Jenny, Jessica, and Nikolai. Anyone from your group want to, or speak from the group?
I'll do that, Veronica.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. So hi everyone, I'm Ella. Right now I'm doing PhD at Deakin. So it's great to see you all here. And we just have very brief discussion, and it's been very inspiring. Everyone's contributing, and I'm just trying to provide very quick elaboration of what we have here in the screen. So we started by brainstorming what problems or challenges that people mostly have in the group, and Nikolai came up first by saying that there are double in terms of workload preparation, in terms of work preparation. Like if you're teaching, you need to prepare much more materials to accommodate different learning styles or probably different limitations in terms of what technological tools available to you and your students. So in short, workload doubles, and though many opportunities are also emerging with the easy access of technology without us having to travel like we used to do when we have to work or go to school. Still, we think that the workload doubles, and it is much more, how do we say, becoming a problem when the access to technology is also limited to some people. And I think Janin or we talked about having these problems not only on the part of the teacher, from my perspective as a teacher educator, when the teacher doesn't have the pedagogical knowledge to understand what he or she has to do with the technology, though it's available, but can't maximize its use to teach. And also on the part of the students, though they are probably born as the digital native or digital generation and have grown up with all the digital ease that they can have access to, still when they don't know how to use the technology to actually engage in learning and not simply, get transmitted, transmit information or simply live with the technological access that is available to them, but it's more the learning engagement that we want, then it's still on the part of the teacher to provide experience where they can learn how to use technology for learning into the maximum potential it can provide. And I think Amar also says about having the technology and how it has created the digital space where it's becoming a new space for social situation of development and learning. But we are leaving this quite a discussion for us to further on, as we may talk more about what we meant by this. And still, when we are talking about different types of students, some students do have experience problems with doing online most of the time, especially with students with disability. I think there is an experience with, hypersensitivity, and this can not only impact the way they can engage in terms of the learning and interaction online, but also maybe it can impact how others learners on screen interpret their not becoming presence on screen. Like maybe we are in this forum, some are not turning on their cam and some are turning on all the time, but that has to do maybe with this particular type of disability that we are not aware of. So these are some of the things that we just discussed in the group. Thank you.
Thank you, Ella.
That was, that point about disability is quite interesting and important, I think, in the ways that it either gives access to or restricts access to certain people with disabilities. Janine, you had a comment about that, I think, on the Jamboard.
Yeah, I put a sticky note up about what I got my students who had disabilities to do with their technology. So it was specifically about the luminance, font size, decreased contrast ratio, and taking a break before they felt they needed it. Those are the 4 things. So students with migraine or so on, those are what we used for them.
And we still have problems with defectology, both with face-to-face classroom. Is it just a transition problem to the online environment, or is there something fundamentally different in your experience to what we're doing within online?
Oh, sorry, to me,
I actually have general, but you.
Oh, sorry.
I'm relying on your expertise.
You may have noticed my camera is off for a lot of the time because I am hypersensitive to light. So I get migraines from light, and I never have my fluorescent light on because that's like kryptonite. And so in a classroom that is lit with natural light, I can interact all day, not a problem. However, the way in which the artificial light it changes the pain level, the decreases cognitive load hugely. Yeah, it does change the interaction, not just so I know it from experience, but it also has enabled me to help other students succeed by altering the material culture within my classrooms to enable them to get through. So whilst it's been disabling at times for myself, it's also enabled me to, or facilitate, allowed me to facilitate the progress of other students.
So one of the important ideas there that's been important in you adapting and also enabling students to adapt to the online environment has been understanding the material culture of the students and how that affects their particular abilities or otherwise.
Yeah, and definitely the defectology, the different rather than the delayed trajectory.
Yeah. Group number 2.
Yeah. Group 2, Judy, Sharon, Suxiang, David.
Oh, okay. Well, with as a person with a disability, I would tend to agree, because I started off my PhD full-time but found 4 days a week because I have essential sensitization syndrome, which is elevated by sitting. I have back pain, chronic back pain. And so, you know, being here is, you know, quite for all days is quite a task. So I actually went from full-time to part-time to adapt my PhD journey for my particular needs. But we talked about the aspect of the time that is required to prepare materials. We talked about Zoom fatigue, and it's up on the board here. We talked about the aspect of considering the quality, you know, as far as teaching online, that you in the university sphere, that there was an assumption, I think David talked about, was that, you know, that we would have smaller class sizes, yet in actual fact they've doubled, or, you know, they've enlarged. We talked about the micro-credential subjects that are certainly in a PhD. For some it's suitable, that kind of learning, for others it's not. And so I think it comes back down to the courses and how they cater for the individual, the diversity of students within a course. And we talked about the social aspect, which I think David talked about when he first came back into the room.
Thank you.
Interesting.
Group 3 is our group: Catherine, Demi, Esrak, and Motoko. And anyone from our group want to be the speaker? Maybe Catherine, do you mind?
Gosh, well, sorry, I'm the oldest, so I was like, oh, gosh, we had actually Motoko Christensen has done her PhD thesis on teaching and learning in an online situation. And in the early days, so I was like really surprised that Motoko was teaching using email and social networks in the late 80s, right? Because I just thought the World Wide Web dated to the 90s. So we're talking about finding a social networking site that she could keep the students secure. So she couldn't use Facebook. She was using Beeble, but Facebook took it over, but just Facebook just moved everybody out of the way and just crushed everybody else. And So worrying about personal information, we talked about some of our students actually have no money. They don't have a computer, they don't have a tablet, they're on a smartphone, and they actually don't have enough data to join Zoom. And that's something really big. In my students have smartphones and they can't read the text sometimes. And if they go to print something out, because I send them files, they'll have to go to a convenience store to do that. They don't have any kind of hardware. So just talking about how engagement was quite challenging, and Motoko recommended using ice breaking or game sessions so that the students could get to know each other before the class started, and the choice of software was very important. She felt, you know, software that I find, like one of my colleagues says use book widgets, but when he showed me, it seemed like fill in the blanks and then it could be automatically marked. And I didn't like that idea because I feel that sometimes students have a different idea of what the language system is, and they can use something that's not what the teacher thought was fill in the blanks. They use something else, which is possible, but the teacher hasn't thought of it. So something that, I mean, not paying attention to marking so much, not having to do it yourself is not, I don't think it's convenience. So I don't know, is there anything else that we talked about?
I think you have a very comprehensive summary of our talk. Yeah, but feel free to add other group members.
Just the correction, I was typing, but I'll say but to make it clear. I wasn't using SNS in 80s. SNS is not available then.
Yeah, that's
emails at those stage, and in 90s that was in email and CD-ROM, and then we started doing all sorts of experimental thing. My PhD was in 2010. That's when I used SNS, and that was a Bebo. So yeah, that timeline is a bit whack. That's
sorry about that,
because I was talking too much then. Sorry.
Oh,
thank you.
Yeah, contributed a lot. Thank you. Yeah, John.
I mean, what Catherine mentioned there about kind of filling in the blanks and whatever. I mean, there's a sense in which the simplification or the kind of mechanization that involves the digital wealth can really work against higher order thinking or more sophisticated ways that we can certainly, you know, in face-to-face, but also in this kind of interaction we're having at the moment, we can certainly develop, can't we? So it's not inherent to the particular technology, or, you know, whether we're face-to-face or online. It's in fact inherent to the pedagogy that we choose. And but there's a sense in which when we are face-to-face, there is the opportunity to engage in more profound ways.
Oops. Girls.
Yeah. I meant like the software that teachers choose for the homework, giving students an assignment. Yeah, in the software that they choose, mechanization of a kind can be intrinsic to that software. It's a really difficult decision, and some teachers who teach really a lot, they just don't have the time, and so the mechanization for them, and, you know, score out of 10 is really easy for them to record. So that's kind of the point. Yeah, but I agree with you, it's not totally inherent in the online atmosphere, but we're all like, we're very willing to talk. My Japanese students are slightly less willing to talk.
Yes, and establishing, I mean, but that's establishing a culture and a social way of doing, which is kind of something we really have to work with in the classroom as well. When they first come in face to face,
yeah,
I don't know about other people's experience of teaching, but, you know, people are not willing to talk. You have to give them icebreakers. You have to get them to activity. You have to do, you know, the whole series of things that we've developed from the face to face to do that. But yet we have
also. I would like to add, sorry for the interruption.
Thanks, Ezra.
the idea of teaching online in conservative society like Saudi Arabia. No cameras, no interaction, like face-to-face interaction. That the teacher can't open the camera and the student as well, and also like the home, like the privacy of the home, it's all on the classroom. This is very, very critical in our society. So that it's make the chat is the main source for interaction. Even in my data, very, very limited interaction. For ESP and EGB, like in teaching English, that was very like not ideal situation. Nobody interact at all, and this in my data, it's showing badly, like how I really measure the interaction on those online classroom in the teaching languages.
Just moving to some of the ways that we can think through this using some of the ideas we've been developing here. And one of the things that I've been worried about, and certainly if you'd looked at the paper I put in my folder, which is a draft, I'm guilty of myself, is that kind of balkanization, is breaking things up into little pieces that can be put to students and they can do within a single activity. And when I mentioned this to Nikolai, he immediately raised the idea of Robichenier. And so I was wondering if I could call on Nikolai to talk about ways that he's been thinking about within his teaching and doing, to be able to stop the breaking of these things into little pieces, but to give a full experience of what it is to learn and to be part of a higher education, which is really about changing people.
Well, John, do you want me to say something now?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we had a discussion in the group and I participated, but plus to this, because the second question was how we can use cultural, historical, or activity or chat to meet the challenges. And look, if you look from the point of view of обучение which should lead development, this is the requirement for cultural, historical. We have to take into account the three main components or four main components of the teaching, learning, обучение process. Never mind, is it online or face-to-face? So teacher is number one, student is number two, tools is number three, and the content is number four. The content of what we teach, okay? So teachers and students are the things I'm not going to discuss now because it's a different topic. Tools might be direct tools when we are teaching just face-to-face, or might be online tools when we are using Zoom or whatever, any other platforms. But what is also important to обучение to be efficient is the content. If you come back to Vasily Davidov's curriculum for primary school, what was the basic idea? The main idea was that we have to design the content of the learning, according to the several principles. So it's not a knowledge transmission, it's a kind of series of learning tasks. The teacher gives to the whole class a series of learning tasks. In Russian, it is учебная задача, learning tasks. And through solving learning tasks collectively, from one learning task to the next learning task, to the next learning task. So through solving learning tasks using their intellectual potentials, their thinking, their discussions, their debates, trying to discover something which might help them. So moving from one learning task to another learning task and then to next learning task builds the blocks in students' understanding of the content. So these learning tasks are not focused on remembering things, are not focused on the information you should remember or you should memorize. The learning tasks are focused on the certain challenge we have to solve. And through this solving, we are obtaining the methods, the ways, the general ways of solving problems of this type. So an example is that in Davidov's classes, when the next task is coming, the students' minds are designed in such a way that when they look at the task, they're not trying to find the answer to this question. They are trying to think, what is the method of solving of this task? And to find the method of solving of this task, I have to identify what type of task it is, because children know that there are 7 different types of tasks, and there is a method of solving the task appropriate to each of these. So they are mentally begin to analyze the task in a different way, not to find the answer, but to find, okay, first I have to, this is the task. What is the type of the task? This is the task of the second type. What is the method to solve this task? Universal. This is the method. How this method can be applied to this concrete task, which gives the answer. So this is the kind of idea, and that was the key, the core, the most important idea of Davidov. He said that the content, the learning material should be designed in such a way that it develops children's ability to analyze, not to remember and to reproduce, but to analyze the reality, analyze the material in mathematics, in language, in science, in any discipline. So, and I think, so coming back to the point, I think that online learning provides sometimes even better opportunities for us, the teachers, to redesign the learning material in a way that it provides a kind of system of learning tasks, because of online nature. And then instead of asking children or students to remember something, there is a task given, and the teacher can come from one break room to another. Then they're trying to solve the task. Then we meet again, and they are presenting their solutions. Then we have a group discussion, and then so this is what I'm thinking about, and this is what we do not have in Australia. There is no even one program curriculum in school or university which is designed as a series of learning tasks, specially created, specially designed in a coherent way. Then from solving one task, the child is able to come to the next task, which creates a kind of trajectory of their movement within the material. And of course, as a result, they will remember much more, okay, but not directly. But the main result is that they will begin to think differently. They will begin to think in a way that before looking at the task, you have to understand what type of task it is, and what might be the possible way to solve this task. So this is what in my mind. No, I know I'm very utopian and idealist here, but believe me, Davidov was absolutely materialistic. Sorry, I didn't want this to be a big speech. I mean, a lecture of Nikolai. Sorry.
Just to take up what Nikolai was saying then, which I think is quite interesting, and frame it within a chat within the Engerstrom idea. The idea that we can actually build the ideas as they go along, and in fact, the kind of learning, the outcomes of each of the tasks we set students can then form a sequence which builds in that way. It's framed in a different way to the way Davidov and Nikolai are framing this. I think it's actually quite an important thing we can learn about and from working within the online environment. And in fact, we kind of do it without really thinking about it in the face-to-face, because we have that constant back and forth discussion where we quiz a student about it. But in this new online environment, students are often working on their own, and the kind of ways that we can monitor that and understand that, I think, is quite important. So this idea that the learning that occurs in each activity then forms part of what they're able to the tools that they can then use for the next activity, I think is an important idea. And that idea of sequencing what you're doing to actually build up those kind of generic skills that Nikolai's talking about is really important as well. We're almost at the end here, so we'll just throw it open to any questions or comments from the group here.
I have a language comment. So
Good.
some of this, it seems to me some of the differences we've been talking about are to put them in a, Australia is one of the few countries in the world where you can talk about Bernstein and not get burned down. That's a very useful affordance. So one way of looking at this is to say that in Bernsteinian terms, what you get in the classroom is more of a restricted code. And that what you get online is much more of a elaborated code. And what I mean by that is that in the classroom, you get lots of pronouns, lots of he, she, over there, this, that, and so on and so forth. Online, not so much. Online, lots of common nouns, you have to be quite explicit about what you're saying, about who you want. Contrary-wise, online tends to be framed in a particular way. So for example, the role of presenter is always set out by the technology, whereas in the classroom, not so much. In the classroom, presenters do shift back and forth more than otherwise. And it seems to me that to get back to the point that that John started this with, that Bernstein offers some interesting theories to tackle this with. One other Bernsteinian idea that I think might be useful is Bernstein makes a distinction between competence modes and performance modes, where the competence mode is sort of focusing on what the child has already and how you can build on it. Whereas performance mode is now focusing, actually, Nikolai just gave a really good example of a performance mode, because it's all about content. It's not about the learner, it's not about the teacher, it's about the particular content that decides what's going to be done. And to link it to what we've been doing in the pedology, there's some evidence that competence modes and that the restricted codes are better for children in crisis, whereas the performance modes and the elaborated codes, sorry, the restricted codes are somewhat better for kids in stable learning. That's all. I just wanted to make a theoretical point at the very end, because John started with theory.
And it's wonderful to be able to finish with that. Any other comments, questions?
I'm just wondering, I'm really interested in the aspect of further reading, and whether there is, as far as the digital space being a new space for the social situation of development. Yeah, so if anyone knows, because it relates to the work that I'm doing with my PhD project.
One of the reasons I chose to run this session this way is because I don't think there is that,
Okay.
but I may stand corrected by Nikolai or David or others of you who have wider experience.
Yeah, I think you are right. As far as I know, there is no serious research done about the digital learning space as a possible social situation of development, a theorizing learning space through this. One of my students has just started the PhD about digital, online, culturally responsive learning environment for the university students. And the concept she is going to use is the social situational development. But because of the pandemic, we didn't even start collecting the data because of the restrictions. We cannot attend. It's all prohibited by now. So we have a theoretical discussion. We are building the theoretical chapter, methodological chapter, but unfortunately there is no data. But once there is no data, there is no research. So sorry. But maybe
I mean,
in a year or two.
One of the researchers that does occur to me is Olga Rubtsova, and her work on the digital storytelling, which I'm not sure is really kind of expanded that, but certainly working within very much a cultural
Yeah, I know.
framework.
No, thank you, John. Yeah, Olga is great. Yeah. I was the examiner of her dissertation, but her focus is not to conceptualize online learning environment as a social situation of development. She is mostly focused on computer and the content as a tool and a science. So while studying the cultural science and cultural tools from the instrumental point of view, so to say, rather than the social situation of development. And the second point is that she is not doing online learning environment. She is doing online storytelling, online drama, dramatization, theater, and things like that. But it's very close, yeah.
But certainly with a focus, because she's interested in adolescents and how adolescents
Yeah,
adopt the roles, and how drama, because she's obviously a drama person, interested in how drama can be actually crucial in that. So certainly the papers we discussed at the reading group bear on that to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And, I'll send those through to you, Sharon.
Yeah, that's true.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you very much for that. Okay, well, I'll finish up here. We've run 5 minutes over. I think it's standard to run 5 minutes over, but we have got a 1 hour break here. Joan Hardman will actually be here from South Africa at 5 o'clock. So, and that'll be a great session. Now, can I remind you, there was some homework to do, which you've still got time to do, which she gave you a little bit of classroom transcript to code. It's actually quite interesting to do. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed doing it, to code with it, essentially to think about everyday and scientific concepts that children are using. So if you feel inspired while you have your break to go and look at the transcript she's put, it's in the folder for her. Feel free to go and do that. And I look forward to seeing you at 5 o'clock for Joanne, which will be a great session.
Thank you, John, and everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.